You're listening to the Mike on the Right podcast.
Hey there, everyone, and welcome to the Mike on the Right podcast. This is episode 38, January 19th, 2026. And as always, I am broadcasting from the heart of the heartland in central Indiana, the crossroads of America, the great Hoosier state. Continue to like, share, subscribe, 5-star ratings, everything you can do to continue to help this show grow. It is so greatly appreciated. You can listen to this episode and all others, listen or watch on mikeontheright.com. It'll take you to your favorite streaming content site or on YouTube. Thank you so much for being here. As always, I am going to get right to the point of today. This, if you're listening, the release date today is Martin Luther King Day. And that is significant to our nation and really the course of history. And we are going to talk about that at the end of the show. I want to cap the show with that. We're going to start with what's going on in Greenland and what's been going on with the United States bid to acquire Greenland. Then we're going to talk about the escalating situation in Iran. We have talked about it a little bit on the show, bits and pieces here and there, but there's a really big piece that I want to cover and what the media is not talking about and why it is significant and culturally important, not just to Iran, but the world. And then we're going to finish and cap off with discussing the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King and why his life and his message are important now more than ever. And then also the pieces that people continue to bring up about him that need to be shelved. And so we're going to talk about all of that. Let's start with Greenland. So what is going on with Greenland? Greenland is a huge chunk of snow and ice, and there's a lot of beauty there, but there's not a lot of people. I joke all the time that there's about 57,000 people in the country of Greenland, and there's about 65,000 people in the city of Westfield, where I live. And so there's not a lot of people, but it's huge. And the President of the United States, Donald Trump, is the latest of presidents and U.S. leaders that are looking for ways to acquire Greenland for national security and really economic benefit as well. And first, I want to frame this. This is not a new conversation. For those of you coming into, I'm just hearing all this stuff about Greenland in the news and that Donald Trump is going to send U.S. forces and NATO sends a bunch of people to do military games with the Danish and the Greenlander military. And this is not a new conversation. It has been talked about for decades. The importance of Greenland when it comes to the geopolitical situation we find ourselves in with the countries of Russia and China. Russia, number one, because Greenland, if you think about a globe, right, we always see it kind of flat, but Greenland is pretty darn close to what's going on up there in Russia and how important that is to be a part of. And of course, the Danes are part of NATO. And so why is Donald Trump, though, talking about this so much? Well, first of all, let's look from the geopolitical situation first. That piece of land sits right in that Arctic chessboard up there. There are shipping lanes, there's missile defense, early warning, etc. There are so many positives that Greenland can offer the United States and NATO too. And secondly, the economic piece, all of the minerals and who knows what else is up there. And it's really an untapped resource. And so I am all for, by the way, the acquisition of Greenland in the right way, 100%. And if not acquisition, then how do we come to an agreement or a deal to allow the United States to take advantage of militarily for itself and the world, and through the economic benefit that it would have to the U.S. and the world. And look, I have always been the guy that will talk about what I think Donald Trump does wrong. I will. I've done it on this show. I voted for Donald Trump in 3 general elections. I only voted for him in 2 primaries. The first primary I did not, back in 2016. And I believe in a great deal of the policies that the president stands for. Here's what I don't stand for. There is no scenario of any kind that the United States should take the country of Greenland, the landmass of Greenland, by military force. There are really only two ways that the United States should get its hand on Greenland. And look, again, I agree. 57,000, and let me be clear about Greenland. Denmark, the Kingdom of Denmark acts like this is some culturally connected. It is important to the fabric of the Danes. The majority of people who live there aren't Danish. There's all kinds of native Inuit people who inhabit the country. And most of the people are kind of around the most southern portion of Greenland. Now, that doesn't mean that should be ripe for military action to take it over. But what I am saying is that there's no reason because the Danes aren't using it like it needs to be used. Period. Now, that doesn't mean that we should take it away from them. I see two options here. The first is the United States could acquire it, as we did the Louisiana Purchase, as we did with Alaska, as we've done through the course of time, is we could purchase part or all of the country. We could do that. Now, you're probably sitting here and listening and saying, Mike, you have dogged the United States of both parties for the terrible spending practices that they have. And I would say you're right. But this is something that, for our national security, for the resources it would provide, is a net benefit to the United States, including our cash position. Now, that doesn't mean that because we can get something out of the ground or what have you, that we should take it over alone. There's a number of things that I think, from military and early warning, and again, Russia being our geopolitical foe and stuff with China, like, we need Greenland in some fashion. I actually agree with that. And there have been presidents and Congresses that have agreed as well. Nothing has just ever come to fruition. And honestly, this is the largest conversation that anyone's ever had about it. If we can't purchase it, two, and I point to this, the Danish Prime Minister, the leaders of Greenland, the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, and the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, met in Washington, D.C. last week to discuss the situation. Now, Trump is focused on essentially complete control. And I'm not saying that wouldn't obviously be preferred. Military action is not the route. But I was reading in the Wall Street Journal after the meeting that the Danish Prime Minister said, hey, we will lease the United States any land they want for military. Any and all. And we can come to mineral rights agreements. Any and all. So the United States, if it can't acquire it, which is honestly the first thing I would think we should do, is how then can we still get access to what it provides us? And 100%, I believe that we could do that through these agreements. We have military bases all around the world in places we don't run. Absolutely, we could do it. And we should, if the first option is not the choice. They have already offered that to us today, and I would guess at any point we could take advantage of that. And that would be the second most ideal situation. At no point should there be military action against Greenland. And this whole, by the way, I always laugh at Europe because sometimes I think they're a bunch of pansies sometimes, is they did all these war games or these military exercises in Greenland. Like, some of these countries sent like one or two people. Like, the military action was almost like a group chat. And they could have done this virtually over Call of Duty or something. You know, that's just to get the headlines and what have you. So don't let the media tell you that again, decades this Greenland acquisition has been talked about. And President Trump is trying to finish it. I think we should do it. I think we should look for ways to do it. Acquisition first, leasing second. But I think that we have to, again, with the Monroe Doctrine that I talked about last week, now called the Donroe Doctrine, as part of our hemisphere, and as part of the actions going on in the Arctic Circle, we have to have a better position militarily with missile defense and military bases and controlling shipping lanes and all the different things, And then secondly, the minerals there are important to the world, and keeping China from putting a stranglehold on some of these minerals and things that, and keeping OPEC from being, the last crusade of oil production, even though I know the United States is doing a lot now. There's all the way around. It's good. But military action is not the way to go about it, and Donald Trump is wrong on that point. With that, let's move on to the next topic that we have, and it's what's going on in Iran. And I want to talk to you about this from two angles. Generally, before I get to those two angles, this wave of unrest in Iran that you have been tangentially hearing about has been going on since December, and it was initially tied to the economic conditions. We've talked about this in previous episodes. The economic conditions in the country, because there's so many sanctions because of the evil, horrible regime, the theocracy, and the Shah of Iran, the Ayatollah of Iran, and the president, and all these hardliners who have absolutely just destroyed this country, destroyed its culture, oppressed women, oppressed Israel. This country is one of the axis of evil. Absolutely 100% part of the axis of evil. It's an evil, evil government. And these people should absolutely be taken to task. And I'm not saying that the president needs to go arrest the Ayatollah like he did with Maduro in Venezuela. But I'm saying is this has got to go. And it seems like this unrest has now shifted into just generally anti-regime protests. And of course, now there's military crackdown and civil crackdown where they're killing these protesters. They've killed a bunch of these protesters. And I do think the United States should look at doing something about it. Maybe I don't believe in a boots on the ground scenario whatsoever. But just like we wiped out, which by the way, the mainstream media told you, Trump really didn't wipe out their nuclear weapons. I'm not saying it's all the way gone, but we hit it hard. And they're a decade or more behind now where they were. Maybe the United States need to do something about that. But that's not what I'm talking about today. I want you to know, though, that you should be praying for Iran, that you be praying for the United States and how we can help in the now, but also be praying for when that regime falls, and it's going to. I firmly believe the Iranian Republic, whatever it is, this government today that took over after the Iran Revolution, I believe is going to fall. And when that falls, now I'm not saying that these people are all going to convert to Christianity. I'm not saying, but we need to be ready as the Christian community worldwide to provide relief, help, missionaries, all the different things. That country is so ravaged by its bad government. The same thing in North Korea. One day, if that curtain ever falls, if that regime ever falls, if that cult of personality ever falls, they're going to need so much help. Just the practical needs of their people alone. But the double standard that I want to expose is the media is rarely talking about this. They talk about it here and there in a little bit. Compared to Israel attacking the terrorist organization Hamas that controlled Gaza, you would think that almost nothing is going on in Iran. But that country, women can't drive. Women wear clothing head to toe so you can't see them. Women get beat for things that absolutely make zero, that should never happen in any scenario. And it is one of the most oppressive regimes in the world. And the media ain't talking about much, right? Because it doesn't fit the narrative. They want to be anti-Israel. They want to be anti-United States, and it's like, well, what's happening in Iran isn't that big a deal. You'll get some headlines, and you'll get some world news folks that'll cover it. But ultimately, Iran is a state sponsor of terrorism all across the world, and those organizations have been shunted by Israel, and now their own people are getting ready to shunt Iran. And the media doesn't want to talk about that because it's anti the narrative. But secondly, all these virtuous protesters at all these universities, you remember this? All these anti-Semitic sons of guns who were just anti-Israel and we got to save Palestine, free Palestine, which the country of Palestine never existed, by the way. Just know your history. There's never, ever, ever been a Palestine. But Columbia University and all these smart people at these higher education locations, these institutions of fine education, protesting and attacking, Jewish people and all these things, and that's the righteous thing. And then a regime just as, if not actually much more oppressive, and the state sponsor of the terrorism in Israel, is getting ready to potentially burn to the ground, and they're killing their own people for protesting, just like these people were protesting freely. And all of a sudden it's crickets. It's too cold. I don't want to be out there. Oh, I'm not going to sing Down to Iran. That shows you the level of disingenuous double standard that exists with the left, with progressives, with anti-Semites, that they would far come and protest Israel, who has defended itself from an attack and has stopped the terrorist organization that it ran all of Gaza. If you think different, you are wrong. You are. I very rarely do I sit here and try to. I'll tell you my opinion. I'll tell you the facts. I'll tell you my opinion. But in that situation, if you think that there was some sort of like holy Palestinian government that was good and righteous and true, wrong. The terrorists ran that place. The terrorists were cowards. They would put their military assets under hospitals and under schools so that people wouldn't bomb them. And then when the Israelis tried to defend their own citizens and to free some of the people, at least in Gaza, that wanted to be free, some of them support it. A lot of them support it. All of a sudden, all these protests are going on. It's almost like these protesters have no brain. And more importantly, it seems like these protesters who protested Gaza must be pro-Iranian regime, because it is dead quiet. Dead quiet. What a shame that is. We should be out and again, I am not a supporter, or let me take that back. I am a supporter of protesting anything and everything you want. You do it peacefully, you don't tear things up. You don't get violent. But at the end of the day, if you are sitting out and protesting Israel for defending itself in Gaza and to wiping out an Iran-sponsored terrorist organization, and saying that these people are oppressed by Israel and we have to get them out and we have to stop this and we got to send Greta Thunberg on a boat so that she can get a picture taken of herself getting arrested because we're going to bring all this food and all this stuff. It's like, and people are already doing that and just making sure that Hamas doesn't steal it, and she's just too dumb to know, whatever. And then at the same time, it's like, okay, the oppression of Iran, the Iranian people, is horrible, and you are cricketing? Get away from me. That type of stupidity has no place in society. You have a right to be wrong in America. You have a right to be dumb in America. But we don't want those people leading anything. So go back to Columbia University and go back to wherever it is that you're just going to shelter yourself in books and read Karl Marx and do all these things, and ignore what's going on in Iran. Just get away. And with that, kind of a weird transition, I apologize. But this is Martin Luther King Day, if you're listening on Monday. If not, I recorded this for Martin Luther King Day. And I want to talk about his legacy. And I want to talk about who he was. I want to talk about what his teaching and what his life meant. And I know I just got done dogging on progressives, socialists, whatever. So I apologize about that. But one of the things, first, Dr. Martin Luther King, I don't care who gives you their opinion. They have a right to have it. I have a right to have mine. Dr. Martin Luther King was a revolutionary when it comes to ensuring that there was, again, not equality of outcome, but equality of opportunity. Something that he fought for. It wasn't that everyone needed to be the same. It's that everybody needed the same starting position so that they could be what God called them to be. And some people are called to be investors and doctors, and some people are called to be, teachers and in the military, and some people are, called to be, they're going to work. Their work is going to be not part of necessarily their ministry or the type of effect they're having in the world. Sometimes it's just like I'm a janitor because I'm a janitor, but you have a positive effect on the people around you, regardless of what position you're in. It doesn't have to come with a leadership title. And that you, no matter color of your skin, have the opportunity to flourish in this country. And that's because that is what God intended. And I 100% agree. From the time of slavery, and not just slavery out of Africa, slavery across the world, this moment for the United States was so defining to say, hey, we have gotten out of the legal slavery issue after the Civil War. But that equality of opportunity, that equality of going to school no matter what color you are, and not being jammed into this segregative movement of schools and of restaurants and of all these things. Martin Luther King said, no, this is not biblical. This is not moral. This is not right. Now, what some of my conservative, I wouldn't even call them conservatives, some of these same people who I dog on all the time about telling Indiana how they're going to run their primaries. I just read it again today, that someone's attacking the president pro tem of the Indiana State Senate, even though this is long since gone because of what's happening in Virginia. And I get it, right? But I'm not going to rehash that. But it's these folks out on the extremes of whatever movement you want to call it that are saying, well, you know what? Actually, Martin Luther King meant nothing. Because Martin Luther King was a Marxist. Martin Luther King was a communist. Martin Luther King and his politics were XYZ. And from a perspective of governance, a perspective of voting, a perspective of that, sure. I'm not saying that's important. I'm not saying it's not important to know the wholeness of the man. But there are plenty of people that I know today that don't share my political persuasion. They're either further right than I am, they're more centered than I am, they're progressive, they're left of center, they're moderate. Take your pick. I know people all across the political spectrum that go to church who are good Christians and who are preaching the gospel. Now, that is different from progressive Christianity, which is an abomination to the Lord. And all these people about immigration and all these different things, there's a difference. Because people want to listen to only the emotions of the Bible and not the truth of the Bible. And what Dr. Martin Luther King had on his political spectrum versus the gospel and the position of man under God really were different. Now, today you might actually see him as more of a democratic socialist, so more like a Mondami, more like a Bernie Sanders. And I'm not saying that's good for the country from the position of leadership, but that doesn't dilute the gospel message and the message in the civil rights movement that came from the core of Christianity, that all men, all women, we're all created equal in the image of God. Every color, every race, every language, every nationality, all of those things. And that is the legacy of Martin Luther King. There's no need to dilute it with his politics. Now, if his politics had brought a progressive view of Christianity, we would be having a different story. But that's not what he did. That's not who he was. It's not what he preached. He was looking for, again, I want people to be judged by the content of their character and not the color of their skin. He wanted that the opportunity for people of all races and nationalities to be able to go to school together and eat together and live in harmony together. That was not affected. The gospel message is not affected by your politics. How you translate it can be. But that's not who he was and what he did. So what I want to do today is I want to call out that view. of him firstly and say that it doesn't matter. And that those who are agitating by using this as, well, he was a Marxist, therefore he had nothing good for anybody. You need to look at that at a case-by-case basis. I think that Karl Marx was abhorrent and had nothing for the good of society. I think that someone who has a democratically socialist view and who is also preaching the gospel, the politics don't matter in that moment. They don't. And the teachings of Martin Luther King are still a shining light. We've got so much more to do in that department as a nation and as a world, as a people, as humanity, that we continue to create equal opportunity, not equal outcome. I want to stress that. It's equal opportunity, and it is up to you as the individual with those around you to become what God has created you to be. Period. And that's what he preached, and that's who he was. So as I close today, I want to remember that legacy as part of the national fabric and also a part of our future. And that pushed the politics out of the way that did not inform his gospel preaching. And remember what God has called us to and who to be. And it is all under his lordship. My friends, thank you so much for listening today. I'm so thankful for you. Please continue to subscribe, 5-star ratings, tell your friends, share. I'm so thankful for everyone and their support. Again, you can listen to this show and all others or watch it at mikeontheright.com. It'll take you to YouTube or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, wherever you want to watch it or hear it. Thank you so much. Have a great